Hey folks, welcome to another edition of Tidbits from the Road, coming at you from, actually right now, 271 North in lovely northern Ohio. Normal northern Ohio day in April, nice and gloomy. I want to come at you and talk to you today about the Supercharger network and what it's like to actually use the Supercharger network on a long trip. Most of you out there, if you're owners, probably have at least used a Supercharger for some reason in the past. But not everybody has probably used it for a long trip. That's the raison d'etre for the Supercharger network, but many people don't use it for exactly that. Sometimes you have a short trip, maybe you need to do 350 miles and you have a Supercharger on the way and you got to use that. It gets a little different when you have a long trip. So for those that didn't know, I live in Ohio, as I have already told you here, and I had a trip to Boston for a video game conference called PAX East. Had a great time out there. It was great. But the trip on that is north of 700 miles. Let's see if I can get over here. And that's a heck of a trip for any trip, let alone an EV. And so everything I had ever heard about the Supercharger network going into this, and I've been to Superchargers as well, just like you all probably have that are owners, that, hey, all the Superchargers are great, there's amenities, it's just the best thing in the world, and that's not entirely true. So I kind of wanted to, for you non-owners out there, I kind of wanted to set some expectations to a better level about what the Supercharger network is. First of all, let me say this: the thing that you do hear about autopilot and about Teslas on long trips, about just being better refreshed when you get to your destination, is completely true. Now, I don't know how much that's autopilot and how much that's just the fact that this is an EV and we're stopping every X amount of distance. But man, what a world of difference in this 700 plus mile one-way trip than other 600 plus mile trips that I've taken in the past with my ICE car. So definitely it's a new way of traveling. It's a slower way of traveling, and I think that's the key more than autopilot is. Although don't get me wrong, autopilot was on probably, man, I'd have to say at least 90% of the trip. There was some snow, and I have a AP1 car, and the design on that is a little unfortunate, and so I lose AP in the snow. If there's any appreciable amount of snow, the radar gets blocked and I lose AP. And that happened twice during this trip. So I have to say probably 90% of the whole trip I was using an autopilot. But I digress. Let's start firstly with the nav system for the car. So I don't have the new nav system that was coming out, that's being pushed out at some point here. But I have to think that it's probably, well, maybe, I don't know, but probably not going to change what I'm about to say. And that is, at least on this long trip like this, like super long, 700 plus mile trip, be sure you're ready for not arriving anywhere close to the time that they present you. The time that I got, we left very early in the morning from Ohio heading out, and the time that I got for arrival was in the early 10 o'clock hour. We did not arrive to Boston until about 12:30 a.m. Now, we had a small traffic hiccup, which I don't think really appreciably hurt that time at the very beginning of the trip. And we also did have a lunch break that we stayed a little longer than when the car was going to be ready, completed charging. But those two things were not 2.5 hours different than what was quoted me for the time. So, and then on the way back, it was very similar. I think it was like 2 hours time, because we were a little more on point on that lunch break than we were the first time out. Still, moral of the story here is, if you have a long trip, like more than 2 superchargers you're using trip, the accuracy of your arrival time, even listening to the exact amount of time that the car expects you should charge at the supercharger, and in my case, I didn't have any charging issues with the chargers being full and not being able to get a spot, or having to share a spot with another car. So that time is just probably not, it's just probably not something you should rely on. But the other thing that was super surprising, so like I kind of glossed over here a little bit ago, you know, you always hear about, yeah, the supercharger network's great, there's all these amenities, you know, it's just this wonderful, happy-go-lucky, sunshine and unicorns and kittens experience. And I am here to say that that's all supercharger stops are not created equal. Sometimes that is what you get, like, you know, and for the most part it was. So 3 of my stops were strip malls. Another stop was a full-blown mall, which are kind of rare to exist anymore. And, you know, other stops were indeed just, you know, walking distance amenities were not a big deal. However, not always the case. So at least 2 of my stops where a food icon appears on the supercharger to tell you that that's something that you can get at that supercharger may have been a bit disingenuous. 2 stops, really all that was there were grocery stores. So yeah, you can get food, but when I see a food icon, I'm thinking restaurant, right? And to be fair, both of these grocery stores were stores that had restaurants in them. Like, you could go up and order like hot bar type food, and get some food. But anyone that's been in one of those type of grocery stores knows, at least here on the East Coast, that those little hot bar in-store restaurants typically close earlier than kind of any other, you know, standalone restaurant out there. And because I hit those grocery stores at a later time twice, those were both closed and no food. So that really stunk, because we were kind of hungry there. So we kind of just went with our built-in snacks that we had in the car already and pressed on. In another instance, you know, it was quite the hike to get to some of the amenities. You know, not a terrible walk, but I mean it was good. You know, half-mile walk to get to, you know, the advertised food that they had at one of the stops. So, all this to say, and actually, here's the other thing too, and owners, you'll definitely be aware of this, but it's one thing to put a pin on the map and say there's a supercharger here. It's another entirely to actually find it. My rider, my brother-in-law who came with me, put it perfectly. It's a bit of like playing Where's Waldo to find where exactly the supercharger is at the location that you're at, and that puts it pretty succinct and perfectly what that experience is like. Because, you know, especially like the mall, the full-blown mall that we were at, you know, malls are pretty big. You know, they have a huge footprint. The parking lots are massive. And, you know, finding the actual location of the supercharger is not the easiest thing in the world. So that's kind of the spot. I kind of want to ground any, especially all you Model 3 reservation holders out there. I want to ground the expectation of what you're getting with the Supercharger network. The Supercharger network is undoubtedly amazing in that it allows us to do this. And actually, my experience may have differed a little bit from you Model 3 reservation holders, because your car is going to have the ability to do 315 miles on a single charge. If you want to range charge it, that's going to drop to probably about 285 on a standard charge. But my 85D here, my standard charge is 237 miles and my range charge is 262. So the time that I spent at the Superchargers and how quickly my car charges, and how far I'm able to go on a single charge is going to be different than what you had, and that would have affected my time to destination too. So your mileage may literally vary on what your experience is. You may get a much better experience than I am having a longer range car. So kind of to sum it all up, Supercharger network is great. Probably expect to spend more time than the car tells you, and that maybe even you expect actually taking to get to your destination. Not all the stops are going to be the same in what you're going to find, but overall, a pretty enjoyable trip. And boy, did I feel just absolutely, even though I arrived at 12:30 in the morning, it was I was as refreshed as you could possibly be for someone that just drove 700 plus miles and arrived at their destination at a very late hour. So that's it for my thoughts on this. Let me know what you think. If you like what you see here, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. Super important on YouTube to have those subscribers, and definitely hit the like button too. Both of those things will pop these videos up in the algorithm to display them to other Tesla fans out there. For those out there that are supporting me on Patreon, thank you so much. Especially a shout out to those supporting at a $10 or higher per month level. You'll see their names at the end of this show. Thank you so much. If you enjoy this content and get some value out of it, I ask that you consider giving a little value back at Patreon. So check out patreon.com/Tesla Tidbits if you're interested in that. So that wraps up this show. Thank y'all for, as usual, for checking me out. And until next time, keep it charged and hit the road.